Yo, what is up guys? It is Bumfris, back with another episode of Entitled Parents. Today's episode is gonna be a banger and I know you're gonna love this one. Before we get into it, if this video can hit 5,000 likes, the next episode of Entitled Parents will be 25 to 30 minutes long. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe, then sit back, relax, and get annoyed at some entitled parents. When my daughter was little, before she started preschool, she's now 36 years old, she would have difficulty breathing after visiting my mother-in-law's house or any place that allowed smoking. This was back in the mid-1980s when you could still smoke in restaurants and such. My wife, who is now my ex-wife, and I do not smoke. Finally, after one such occasion that my daughter was having problems breathing while at home, it was bad enough that we took her to the clinic. After examining my daughter, the doctor asked if we smoked. After telling him no, he asked if anyone in our house or extended family did. At that time, my mother-in-law was a heavy smoker and she was the only person that would smoke inside our house. We also had friends that smoked come and visit, but they didn't smoke inside the house. The doctor explained that my daughter was showing signs of a mild allergic reaction to secondhand smoke. It was mild enough that treatment wasn't necessary, but we needed to limit or avoid exposing her to people that smoked. Now, my mother-in-law and I had never been on good terms, but it got much worse after I posted no smoking signs inside of our house. She saw them, but said that it didn't apply to her because she was grandma. She usually avoided visiting when I was home, and my ex wouldn't stand up to her. Finally, my mother-in-law came to visit when I was home. She came strolling in, puffing away, and after I asked her politely to put the cigarette out, she refused, saying that she had the right to visit her grandchildren however she wanted. I then asked her politely to leave, and she pretty much ignored me. Now, I need to add something here. I was raised to be polite and to respect others, and that was reinforced by my Marine Corps training. There are some exceptions to me being a nice guy, such as putting my children or wife in danger, as my mother-in-law soon found out. Since she wouldn't take me seriously and refused to leave, I physically picked her up and took her outside. At that time, she was much heavier than me, but she had finally pushed me over my limits. I sat her down on the driveway next to her car and told her to go home. I went back inside and locked the door behind me. My wife didn't say a word, but she was smiling because she knew that I could get away with treating her mother like that. Of course, that wasn't the end of the fight. Our neighbours had been old drinking buddies with my wife's parents, so my mother-in-law stormed over to their house and called the cops on me, claiming assault. It's a small town and I know a lot of the cops, but the two that showed up I'd never met. Since my mother-in-law called them, she met them in the driveway, and by the time they started knocking on my door, they were planning to arrest me. However, I'm not dumb enough to open the door. After they hear my side, and the fact that my mother-in-law didn't look roughed up, their attitude quickly changed. After showing my ID with the address given to them by my mother-in-law, they stepped back from the door and talk a bit. A few minutes later, one cop comes back up to the steps to talk to me while the other one went to talk to her. His next question actually surprised me. After all, I have had a few not so nice meetings with police. He asked me if I wanted to press charges. For example, breaking and entering, trespassing, assault, as domestic violence was not a thing back then. It was tempting, but no. My ex is an only child, and I'm not going to forbid grandma from seeing any of my 4 kids as long as it's on my terms, i.e. no smoking. Instead, I said that I just wanted her off my property and that she will have to call before coming over. Side note, after this incident, she no longer talked directly to me unless I answered the phone, so that in itself was a small victory for me. The relations with my mother-in-law were pretty much gone. I rarely saw her even though she also lived in that small town, but that is a whole different story. The entitled grandma trained her daughter well because after 19 years, I'd finally had enough of my ex's entitled attitude and I divorced her. Neither my ex or my ex-mother-in-law no longer talk to me. No hurt feelings on my part. They don't even talk to each other, something I had wished for back when my children were little. You know, there's not a lot of entitled parent stories where I get to the very end and I think, you know what? The outcome of this story is the best for everyone involved. But this story is one of the few that I've ever read that I really think that every person involved has probably had the best outcome possible. I mean, this guy no longer has to deal with the entitled mum and or the entitled grandma. The kids are now all grown up and can make their own decisions if they want to deal with that level of entitledness. And honestly, everyone just seems like they're a hell of a lot happier than they would have been back then. Good on this dad for putting a stop to the line of entitledness. So, my wife and I are young and didn't have much money, so we asked our respective parents to help as much as they could. Her parents, who are amazing people, help way more than we could ever have asked for and never asked for anything in return. They actually were surprised that my wife was able to pull off as much as she did with the small amount that we had. My dad had recently been through a terrible divorce, a long story for another day, and had moved into a new place. I didn't feel comfortable asking him for money, so the majority of the load was left to my mother and stepfather. One thing about my mother is nothing is ever simply a gift with her. Everything comes with a twist. You just never know when she'll use it against you. When we mentioned that we needed help, of course, she was more than happy to help. Her gift to us was to pick whatever photographer we wanted, no matter the price. We happily accepted and thanked them both. Fast forward several months later, the wedding is finished and we are barely a month into our marriage. A little more background about the story first. My grandfather, being my mum's dad, was in the late stages of dementia. He no longer recognized anyone, believed that his dreams were real, and never really answered with anything much more than the occasional yeah to anything that was asked. It was a rough time watching him turn into this. Of course, my mother refused to believe that he didn't know who she was or who I was, and regularly told us that we were wrong when we were trying to convince her that he was absent mentally. So the wedding is done and we're waiting for the pictures, all 699 of them. Occasionally in contact with the photographer to check in and see how things are progressing. It was always friendly conversation, and one day my wife receives a concerning email from the photographer asking us to please have my mum stop harassing her for pictures. Confused by this new information, we ask her what she is talking about. According to the photographer, my mother has been emailing and texting her multiple times throughout the week, asking for any pictures that she had finished without telling either me or my wife. She was trying to see pictures from our wedding before us. Of course, I immediately called her, and I will admit that I was very angry and I went about it in a way that I should not have, but I also feel justified. So I call her and confront her about not only how she was treating the photographer, but also about sneaking behind our back to get pictures before we do. Instead of owning up to her mistakes, she tried the power move, thinking that I would back down because she is my mother after all. She stated to me with complete sincerity in her voice that since she paid for the pictures, she should be able to see them when she wanted. Of course, I lost it. Not so politely reminding her that it was a gift to us from her and my stepdad, and that if she intended to act this way, she should have just found her own photographer. After all, my wife had researched for days to find the perfect person. When she realized that the power move wasn't going to work, she turned to guilt, bringing in my grandfather. This of course angered me even more. She said that she wanted the photos so that she could take them to show my grandfather, and that it was wrong of me to deny him seeing these pictures before he passed. At this point, I had made up my mind, and out of pure disbelief, I had nothing to say. So I quietly informed her that she would receive the pictures when me and my wife felt comfortable showing her, and that she needed to stop harassing the photographer or none of us will get pictures. To this day, she has not received the pictures. The most surprising part is that she hasn't even asked for them. Not too long ago, I asked my stepdad why, as he was clueless to all of this happening, and he said that she was still trying to make me feel guilty about how I spoke to her. That is my mother, ladies and gentlemen, always the master manipulator. Man, the entitled parent stories these days have gone from a place where you'd come across the random entitled parent in the street to people sharing some pretty sad stories about their own parents. Like I said in the last story though, not many entitled parent stories have a reasonably good ending. This one, kind of like the first one, ended not so bad for the OP. He managed to get his photos, he never had to pay for them, and he's removed that little bit of toxicness out of his life as well. More than anything though, he'll know to never accept a gift from his entitled mum ever again. So, just some backstory first. My dad works in the military and it sent us overseas. During this time, we lived in a number of places, but at the time of this story, we lived in northern Italy. My parents sent me and my two older brothers to Italian schools, and because of this, the three of us learned and spoke fluent Italian, but the first thing we learnt were cuss words. Now, in Europe, you can buy some pretty cheap plane tickets and could fly most places in Europe for cheap. My parents took advantage of these tickets and the fact that we were in Europe to go everywhere. By the time I turned 12, I'd been to every country in Europe, Morocco, Israel, Jordan, Tanzania, and some places in Asia. Yes, I'm well aware of how lucky I am to have been to these places and to have done so many cool things. However, because of how often we were on planes and traveling, looking out the window of a plane wasn't all that interesting. So, to keep us quiet, Dad had gotten each of us a Nintendo DS so that we could play while we traveled. And now this is where our story begins. Me, when I was 11, and my family were on a plane. I can't remember where it was to. The plane was arranged so that there would be 3 seats on either side and a place to walk in the middle. Me and my brothers sat together. I got the aisle seat and my mum and dad sat on the other side with some nice guy. Me and my 2 older brothers pulled out our DSs after the plane took off. This apparently was the wrong thing to do, because when we closed the window and started playing on our DSs, an entitled Italian mum got mad. This lady was sitting behind my dad, and she was sitting next to her 16-ish-year-old son and what I assume was her husband. And when she saw me and my brothers not looking out our window, she immediately started screaming at my dad. Now, my dad didn't speak Italian, and she was screaming something pretty close to Italian. This woman was yelling about how this was her first time on a plane, and how me and my brothers were setting a bad example for her kid, who looked to be 16, by not looking at the beautiful land below. And how we, being me and my brothers, should be overjoyed to be looking out the plane because it was a rare opportunity and we were wasting it, and how my dad was a horrible parent. I really don't know why she had such a problem with 3 boys not looking out the window. My dad was confused and asked me to translate. So I told him what she was screaming about, and my dad asked me to tell her in Italian about how this wasn't anything new for us and we were being quiet. I, however, was pissed off at this woman for being loud, rude, and for calling my saint of a dad a horrible parent. So I, instead of saying what my dad wanted me to, said in a very polite tone in Italian, "Listen, witch. Just because this is your first flight doesn't mean that it's ours. We have flown many hours and have looked out the window plenty. We have been quiet and respectful, unlike you. You have annoyed other people because some kids you have nothing to effing do with have chosen to play quiet on their games instead of looking at the effing window. Mind your own damn business." The woman sat there in shock for a few minutes and then went back to her seat and shut up. My brothers were pissing themselves laughing, and my dad thought that I told her exactly what he said and was very confused at my brothers. We played our games in peace for the rest of the flight. Hey, I mean, I'm all for entitled parents being put in their place, but this was maybe a little bit disproportionate to what actually happened. But considering the guy was only 11 years old at the time, I'm sure he can have a pass. I mean, really, the situation in itself is absolutely ridiculous. I can't imagine ever getting frustrated about someone else not looking out a window. And if they did have such a big problem in the first place, why didn't they just let their son sit on the window seat? Really, I just don't know. I'll never understand entitled parents, and honestly, I hope that I never have to. My mum loves spiritual, psychic, yoga and meditation type of stuff, and has this pendulum that she made with her psychic friends, which consists of a large crystal, a calendar and a board kind of setup. If you have read my previous posts about my mother, you will know that she is literally insane, and I've barely had any contact with her at all these past 9 months. Since I've been pregnant, she has some crazy idea that my child is not mine, but it's hers. She even messaged me the other day with a picture of her in a rocking chair and the caption, "Waiting for my baby to arrive." So I guess with that whole line of thinking, she feels the need to tell me when I'm in labor instead of me telling her when I'm in labor. I'm 5 days past my due date currently, and it isn't uncommon for first-time mums to go a week or 2 past their due dates. But in the same sense, it's pretty frustrating sitting around for these past few weeks just waiting to go in labor and nothing happens. Not to mention, I have been having a lot of false labor symptoms, and I've been starting to feel a bit sad because I don't know when my baby will be here or if she will come at all. I'm planning on giving birth at home naturally, and I'm terrified of being forced to go to a hospital during a crisis where I will be alone for my entire labor, which is already confirmed that this will be the case if I go past 42 weeks. So worries about a possible emergency induction at a hospital and all kinds of things have already been flooding my mind. So having not only my mother, but also my entire family and many friends asking me daily if the baby is here yet, definitely adds to my stress. I woke up this morning with dozens of missed calls and texts. I turn my phone off while I sleep because I've had bad insomnia for months now, and my phone notifications wake me up easily. I check the messages and it's filled with people asking for pictures of the baby, how excited they are that she is here, asking for my hospital room number to come and visit, as if that were even an option with everything that's going on. Extremely frustrated, I call my aunt and ask her how on earth she thought I was in labor when I didn't even say anything to anyone because I am not. She responded with a sad tone saying that my mum sent out a mass text telling everyone that her psychic reading said that I was in labor today. First of all, why the F would I not tell my family when I was in labor? It's not like I'm trying to hide my baby away from the world. I cannot wait to be able to make that announcement. Second of all, Why does my mother feel the need to make that announcement? She didn't even want to confirm with me that I was in labor or not. It's not her baby and she knows nothing. Also, for those asking what I'm doing about her, we have moved within the last month and my mother has no idea where we are. We also live in a state that is against grandparents' rights, have consulted with the police and a few lawyers, and have notified our midwife about the situation. This post is more of a rant rather than asking for advice because she seriously won't stop with the craziness. You know, usually I'm just full of things to say and full of opinions about something like this, but I am so out of touch with what's going on in this story that I just do not know what to say. All I know is that this entitled mum fits the title of this video perfectly because she seems absolutely insane, and I am so grateful that I don't have a parent who acts like this towards me. I can't imagine going through one of the most exciting times of your life and your mum trying to absolutely ruin it by pretending or even acting like your child is their own child. Sounds like this person has done the right thing and gotten as far away from their mum as possible because that seems like it's going to be the only way to protect both her and her future kid from her mum's entitledness. Alright everyone, that is that for today's episode of Entitled Parents. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy today's episode of Entitled Parents, don't forget to smash that like button down below, and like I said at the start of the video, if we can hit 5,000 likes on this one, the next episode of Entitled Parents will be 25 to 30 minutes long. I want to keep this outro nice and quick, so if you like my stuff, don't forget to subscribe, and just a reminder that on the screen right now, you're going to see 2 of my awesome videos, one of which I would highly suggest you click on, and if you enjoyed this video, I can guarantee you're going to like that one as well. But otherwise, that is that for today's episode of Entitled Parents. I just want to say again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys soon for another episode of Entitled Parents. Bye.